ما مصير العلمنة في تركيا؟ هل باتت مصطلحا فارغا من مضمونه في الدولة العثمانية اليوم؟ وهل هناك مساع حثيثة وممنهجة لتغيير مظاهر العلمنة تدريجيا وإسقاطها بالضربة القاضية؟ العلمنة ومصيرها في تركيا من الداخل. معكم زينب الصفار، تابعونا. هي مشاغبة تفقه اللعبة السياسية وفنونها لا من المنطلق العلمي والخبرة الأكاديمية والمشاهدات فحسب، بل من طبيعتها الإعلامية الحرة الثائرة على كل واقع يفرض على المجتمع التركي وعليها بالذات. هي المثيرة للجدل نوراي ميرت، أستاذة العلوم السياسية في جامعة إسطنبول. ميرت لطالما دافعت عن حقوق الأقليات والمضطهدين في تركيا، ما دفع رئيس الوزراء رجب طيب أردوغان إلى توجيه سهامه ضدها وانتقادها علنا بسبب موقفها من المسألة الكردية، ما أدى إلى طردها من وظيفتها معلقة سياسية في تلفزيون ATV وكاتبة عمود في صحيفة مليات، الأمر الذي جعلها تعبر من على منبر السلطة الرابعة عن خوفها على سلامتها بسبب هذه الممارسات ضدها. جمعية الصحفيين الأتراك شجبت وأدانت الهجمات التي تعرضت لها ميرت من أردوغان، وناشدت المعنيين والمسؤولين احترام الحريات الإعلامية واتخاذ موقف أكثر مسؤولية تجاه من تتمحور مهمته حول الكشف عن الظلم والفساد في المجتمع. ماذا تخبرنا الأستاذة نوراي ميرت عن الفصام في الهوية التركية الضائعة بين العلمنة والأسلمة، وما مصير العلمنة في تركيا اليوم؟ وهل يسعى حزب العدالة والتنمية إلى أسلمة تركيا وتعديل معالم العلمنة فيها وتحويل المجتمع التركي إلى مجتمع يتبع التعاليم الإسلامية بحذافيرها؟ وهل من وجود قواسم مشتركة بين العلمانيين والإسلاميين فيما يتعلق بمستقبل تركيا؟ وكيف ترى الباحثة ميرت مستقبل تركيا من الداخل؟ Professor Nuray Mert, controversial public intellectual and academic from Turkey, welcome to The Inside. Ma'am, to start, you are a controversial figure because back then, when the Islamists came to power, you had a specific stance. Nowadays, what is your stance concerning the Islamists being in rule after all the controversy they had between them and the army? And what can you tell us as a secular person about the issue and the fate of the secular identity of Turkey?
It started actually before Islamists came to power in the early 2000. It started in actually in the beginning of 90s, because there was this rise of Islamism starting from mid-80s, and finally Islamist party of the time won the elections of the major cities. And it was a shock for Turkey, for secular Turkey, that, for instance, Istanbul will be governed by an Islamist mayor. And that's why the issue turned to be more and more controversial, and it created a lot of tension. This issue of Islamism, rising Islamism. Actually, my situation was even more strange, because I was among very few people coming from very secular Republican background, family circumstances and social background, and at the same time supporting the claims of rights of and freedoms of
Islamists to come to power, to rule, but do they have to impose
freedoms? Yeah, religious freedoms.
But to what extent, for example, did they impose their mentality upon, through ruling Turkey, upon the people of Turkey?
Yeah. But I mean, this is the mentality which is coming from the beginning of early Republican years. It changed a bit, in the recent, history of Turkey. Conservative governments, have been in power many times. But the basic thing, the basic mentality, and this hegemonic, secularist hegemonic mentality was there. And it is triggered, as I said before, it's further triggered by the rise of Islamism. and that's why it was a big issue. And the basic thing is inevitably focused on the most symbolic part of it, which was headscarves, you know, and bans and limitations
at the university level and at schools.
Starting from anyway in Turkey, still it's banned, and it's
but now they got back the wearing of headscarf into courts.
Yeah, because it's in practice. Of course, there's a more liberal, you know, atmosphere, and now, thank God, finally we have our students with headscarves in our classes. But still, there is no constitutional change or any law concerning or guaranteeing this right. Apart from that, it's still there. I mean, the law is there that any woman with a scarf cannot be employed in public service, and moreover, cannot stand for being an MP in the parliament, which is very striking.
Did they conduct any kind of polls that could detect the opinion of the people concerning this issue? Because, you know, but Turkey is an Islamic country.
Well, Turkey is a Muslim country.
It's a Muslim country. You have the highest percentage of the population is Muslims, but yet...
And they are quite conservative, and half of the women, according to poll, half of the women are wearing headscarves, the other half they don't, and all that. But after all, I mean, this is why we call it hegemony, I mean, and suppression, since I mean the majority of people are conservative, and there is still this, you know, limits of law and everything.
Maybe because they think that such kind of features that indicate directly the Islamic identity or the Muslim identity could breach secularism. Maybe this was your controversy, yeah.
It's a longer story, actually. Turks, actually, Republican project. And we are talking about secularism, but as if it's a matter of principle. Actually, in the case of Turkey, it was a matter of, you know, kind of psychology of modernization process. Turks, like many others, in the process of modernization, they desperately try to identify with the West. And this project of secularization or secularism, the discourse of secularism, is less related with the principle.
So it has become void of its real meaning when it comes to Turkey.
Kind of. Actually, I can't totally, you know, ignore or deny the principle, or, you know, if we need secularism to be able to have a democratic rule. Leaving aside this question, historically it turned to be, if not void promise, it turned to be more like, you know, concerning to be look like Westerners. That's why, I mean, secularist segments of Turkey, they find it revolting to see women with scarves in visible places, in public space, or, you know, being the wives of politicians.
Prime figures.
And they almost, you know, cry for the fact that, oh God, I mean, now the Prime Minister's wife has a scarf, and she is going to international visits, and she's misrepresenting.
And the First Lady
Turkey,
has
too. And the First Lady as well. So anyway, it started, I mean, this came later, and the reaction was different since the Islamist party, or ex-Islamist party.
But do we have real, Professor Mehmet, do we have real secularism in Turkey nowadays?
Well, actually, it's quite debatable what we mean by real secularism. If I may suggest to stick to the principle, as you say, or as you may imply, which is the separation of
politics and religion.
Politics, or rather than separation. This is the, you know, the short definition of secularism. But what is meant by this principle is the fact that no political authority should legitimize itself with reference to religion, because religion may give enormous authority. Religious reference may, and it destroys democracy. This is the basic idea. But this was not the case of Turkey, of course. In
But
the case
isn't
of
this
Turkey,
what is happening nowadays with the AKP party, where religion is, you know...
No, we still have confusion on everything. Just because now we have conservative party in government, we have more liberal atmosphere concerning headscarves or, you know, being religious, you know, attending prayers. Because at the time of this 90s debatable, you know, hegemony, secularist hegemony, it was being considered almost as a crime to attend to a prayer for a public, for someone who is in public service. So now we
Though Turkey is
now
full
it's
of
over.
mosques, as we can see, yes, and they have this glamorous architectural designs.
Yeah.
But you know, here is the AKP party trying through its regime and through its political practices
Islamize
to
society.
sort of Islamize, you know, changing the features of secularism and turning it into a more Islamized sort of society through its practices on the ground, through, you know, the as they say, imposing the authority of religion.
Well, I mean, Prime Minister and the governing party from time to time, they try to impose the authority of religion. But so far, actually, I don't see anything which violates the principle of secularism. But it's my opinion. In the eyes of, and in politics, perception matters a lot. You know, who perceives what. And in the eyes of secularist people, all these major differences, let alone the occasional use of religion by the prime minister for political legitimacy or, you know, I don't know, on social matters. Apart from that, even these major changes that I regard as democratic changes are being taken as a threat by secularist people in Turkey. And despite the fact that they are being presented as a, you know, negligible minority, they are not. Definitely they are not majority. But after all, this very rigid secularist party, this main opposition party, gets the votes of 20%, sometimes slightly more than 20% of the votes. And Turkey is a very big country, over 75 million, which makes that millions of people, you know, are voting for rigid secularism, let alone being secular.
Extreme secularism.
In my view, extreme, very rigid secularism. So that's why it creates a lot of, tension. And it's not always the government who is to blame.
Yes,
you know what I
but
mean?
there has been certain criticism that the government or the people in the government and the AKP party in particular are trying to work on a new Islamist generation. How far or close is Turkey from that?
Well, to Turkish secularist standards, I mean, this present government took steps in, if not Islamizing, raising more conservative generation. It happens, you know, whoever comes to power tries to shape generations, future generations, unless there is a very democratic rule established and institutionalized in a society. And our societies are not such institutionalized and democratic yet. So we are something in between, you know. I can't say that, you know, now they are very determined, you know, and they took further steps in establishing Islamist generations. But I mean, it's obvious that their purpose is to raise more conservative generations.
Right.
But the problem is, actually, we have to talk more on the perceptions of secularists and their criticisms stemming from their perceptions and the reality, or my observation of the political and social situation in Turkey. The problem is this ex-Islamist party or governing party is getting more and more authoritarian. This is the basic thing that we should be
practices,
critical, which
yes.
creates a lot of problems, you know, and
Right.
democracy deficit in Turkey.
It's very confusing. I'm sorry, but we're going to stop now for a short break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the common denominators between secularists and Islamists as far as Turkey is concerned. The Inside will be back after the break. Stay with us.
الكاتبة التركية المثيرة للجدل والأستاذة الجامعية نوراي ميرت كيف ترى القواسم المشتركة بين الإسلاميين والعلمانيين والشرخ القائم بينهم فيما يتعلق بالمفهوم التاريخي، وكيف تتعاطى دول الجوار التركي مع مساعي الحكومة التركية لاستنهاض المآثر العثمانية التاريخية في السيطرة على المنطقة، وما علاقة هذه الطموحات بالصراع الملتهب في سوريا، وكيف يبدو مستقبل تركيا اليوم.
Well, unfortunately, there is not much common denominator between Islamists and secularists for the future of Turkey, apart from Kurdish question. Now they are, you know, fighting, almost fighting with each other over Kurdish problem. Because
Fighting in which sense, you mean?
in which sense? Because Prime Minister took some steps and start the process of negotiation with Kurdish rebel leader who is
Abdullah
currently in prison, and the opposition party, secularist party, is very critical of that. But apart from this last issue and debate, actually among people, both conservative and secularists, there is an agreement on Kurdish question that they are both quite nationalistic in different ways. Before coming to that, well, one of the major problems of Turkish democracy, and almost we can call it political crisis. Actually, even if it doesn't seem so from outside, it seems as if Turkey is, you know, rising star or whatever, I don't know. This is what government says about its public image in abroad. But after all, we are having a major political crisis in Turkey, and one of the reasons is the rift between secularists and conservatives and their perception of the future of Turkey. It's totally different, and their perception of history is totally different, and their projections of future is totally different, and it makes a very tense society concerning, like, for the secularist people, while Turkey is being lost to Islamism, and this is the major threat for the democracy, because, you know, then Islamism, and they don't differentiate Islamism, authoritarianism, this and that, but they put it together, as I said before, and they said that if Turkey becomes more and more Islamic, which definitely does, this will be the end of this, you know, big dream of secular modern republic, and Turkey is decaying in their eyes. In the eyes of conservative people, Turkey's future is very bright. And
Bright in which sense, you mean?
in many senses. Like, first of all, actually, naturally, they're very proud of their economic success. Economic success of Turkey since they came to power.
And this is something that you cannot sideline when it comes to a country like Turkey. The economic success is very important.
No, it counts a lot in credit of the government, inside and in abroad. And apart from that, in the mind of conservatives, or the governing party, if you like, Turkish history almost starts with their coming to power. And yeah, it changed Turkey a lot. And concerning this suppression of conservative people, well, it's a positive change, to admit it. But on the other hand, they turn to be overconfident. and too self-centered. So much so that they now they refer to history, the highlighted points of history, like the entrance of Turks into this Anatolia, into this region, Middle East. But recently, the Prime Minister set the standard higher by recalling the first control of Anatolia after the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. That's why all plans are designed towards a big Turkey in 2000, in the millennium of
So
Turkey.
it's not a greater Middle East nowadays, we're talking about a greater Turkey.
Well, sounds so. It
Yes.
must be debated actually, that what does it mean to set the standard of celebrating the
How would the neighboring countries or the milieu of Turkey accept this fact?
that
Would it
well,
be welcomed?
that we cannot answer objectively, since we are looking at the Middle East from Turkey. But as someone who is observing Middle East, I have my doubts about the acceptance of or image of Turkey in the region, since it turned to be, in the beginning it was like Turkey is approaching to the Middle East, or removing limits and boundaries, making bridges, historical cultural bridges, and it was a very positive thing to be pursued by others in the region. But soon after it turned to be very narcissistic, and soon after it turned to be more and more clear that now the dream is something like Ottoman Empire. And despite the fact that for long our Prime Minister, who is the architect of this neo-Ottoman foreign policy, in the beginning he was denying the fact that they are Ottomanist. Now, not only him and his ministry, but the whole governmental circles and even secularist people
Are calling for this.
started to praise this politics of Ottomanism and praising Ottoman past. And it turned to be obvious that in the minds of Turks, the projection for the region is some sort of Ottoman Empire, without mentioning of administering the previous Ottoman provinces. They behave so, like in the case of Syria. Well, it started like, well, we are friends of Syria, that's why we are very concerned, that's why we are involved in Syrian things. But all the discourse on Syria turned to be like it was our ex-province. After all, we can't, avoid
Interfering and having the
in
upper
the
hand.
affairs, Even before this thing, tragic thing started to happen in Syria, this kind of civil war or whatever. Even before, Syria was being regarded in a nice way, in a friendly language, supposedly. Syria was being regarded as kind of Ottoman province. There is only this, ex-Ottoman province thing. But why not reviving? Without directly mentioning of reviving Ottoman Empire, it turned to be kind of, referring to Ottoman Empire. And the most important is this mentality is there, and it started to be more, visible, I suppose, in the eyes of
Yes.
the regional, actors and people probably. Even before, this patronizing attitude started to have some disturbances, or it started to intimidate, the actors. And I participate a lot of, meetings with Middle Eastern intellectuals, journalists, and all that. Well, I could observe from outside this changing, image of Turkey from one of a promising, regional actor to, overconfident and patronizing,
Allow me one last question, if I may ask, but briefly, please. How do you see the future of Turkey in a few words?
I don't see the future. If it's in few words, I don't see the future of Turkey in any way, because it's too chaotic at the moment. Again, from outside, Turkey seems very stable. And again, you know, rising economically, as if, you know, economy matters, but not, you know, to be disregarded all other factors. And Turkey is in political crisis concerning this social tension, rising authoritarianism, no freedom of speech, almost. And all these discontents.
And maybe this no freedom of speech, maybe it's one of the reasons of not getting Turkey into the EU, because it has been so controversial.
This is the problem with EU, but it's also our domestic problem, that, you know, Turkey cannot rise and act as an active actor, with this democracy deficit.
Right.
In the region and in Europe, you know, because Turkey is in Western alliance, and I mean, it's a contradiction in terms, actually. And moreover, unless Turkey solves Kurdish problem, I can't see any future. I'm actually, you know, I'm scared about the future of Turkey.
Right. Professor Newray Meirt, controversial public intellectual and academic, many thanks indeed for this interview from Istanbul, from your home actually. Thanks a million for this. إذا لقاء جديد مع ضيف جديد بقضية جديدة، ودائما من الداخل، من كل فريق عمل من الداخل، من كل الميادين. إلى اللقاء.